Hey there, what is going on people? Welcome back to my Vault Hunters 1.18 starter guide. In this video, I'm going to be covering each and every Vault Hunters ability there is, as well as giving them a score from 0 to 10 based on how good I think they are. Of course, since I'm the one giving the rating, this is solely my opinion on what I think about each of the abilities. I'd love to hear what you guys think about the abilities in the comments section below. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. Now, when I first started making this video, I realized not all abilities are equal in their own right. Some require lots of skill points to be viable, and some requires just one skill point to be good. And so I laid out some criteria on how I would rate the abilities. Firstly, since some abilities can have up to 32 skill points put into them, I limited the amount of skill points that any given ability could have to 16 skill points or lower, just to keep things fair. Secondly, I would be giving each ability 3 separate ratings out of 10, then calculating the average to get a final rating out of 10. The 3 categories, I guess you could say, that I'd be rating each of the abilities on were as follows. 1. How good the ability is in practice. In other words, does it do a meaningful job and does it do it well? 2. If the skill points spent or specialization justify the usefulness of the ability. Am I getting the best bang for my buck, or are there other abilities or specializations that are better to invest in? 3. My personal rating on the ability. And lastly, some abilities I felt were worse when they're at their max level. I'm looking at you, Mega Jump. And so I dropped a few skill points off some abilities to get into a place which I thought it was at its best. Alright, now let's get into the abilities. Starting off with Base Nova. Nova will deal a percentage of your damage within a radius around yourself. Your damage can be found in the Statistics tab when you press H, and the damage scales with the armor you are wearing and the weapon you are holding. This means technically, you can do just 1 point of damage if you have your fist out when you cast this ability. In terms of how good the ability is, at Nova level 16, you do 25% more than your normal damage, for 25 mana. Yeah, that's horrible. Base Nova gets a 3 out of 10. Definitely not enough damage to justify the skill points spent on it. Up next, we got Frost Nova. Instead of being a dogshit ability like before, the Frost Nova specialization will freeze mobs around you within a certain radius for a certain amount of time. This ability is absolutely great for making quick escapes and rendering boss mobs completely immobile. However, mobs can still attack you while in this frozen state if you get too close. And if you freeze an archer, that won't stop them from shooting at you. Base Nova gets a 6.8 out of 10. Sounds good on paper, however, there's other abilities that work way better. Alright, here we are with Nova Poison. Nova Poison deals a percentage of your damage through a poison cloud over a duration of time. Now, this sounds like a pretty niche ability until you look at the stats. At level 16, you do 2 times your normal damage for 5 seconds. Poison in Minecraft deals damage every second, meaning you do 10 times your normal damage for 5 seconds. Not only that, but this is a radius ability, meaning all mobs within the poison cloud will take this damage. You can completely forget about getting ganked by any mob with this ability. Did I also forget to mention that the poison has a knockback? 9 out of 10 ability. Absolutely fantastic. The only downside is you need 16 skill points, but if you focus your build on Nova Poison, this could be negated. So that's all of the Novas out of the way. On to Vein Miner and its specializations. Base Vein Miner is a really simple and incredibly useful ability. You hold the keybind and it mines a certain amount of blocks in a vein. You don't even need to put 16 skill points into it for it to be good. It works great with just 4. It's useful for both inside and outside of the vaults, and so I rated a solid 9.2 out of 10. Why not 10 out of 10 though? Because here comes Vein Miner Fortune. Vein Miner Fortune may have its amount of blocks cut in half, but it makes up for the fact that it applies a level of fortune to any ores or vault gems it mines. Combined with a Fortune 3 pickaxe, you can actually get Fortune 4 on anything you mine. That is insanely powerful in Vault Hunters, and it makes progression so much faster. I can ask anyone I know that plays Vault Hunters if they would rather have Vein Miner or Vein Miner Fortune, and 11 times out of 10 they would say Vein Miner Fortune. This ability gets a crisp 10 out of 10. Such a good ability that you can get with literally just 1 skill point. Now, if Vein Miner Fortune is the expensive $8,000 refrigerator that you bought at Home Depot, Then Vein Miner Finesse is the shitty Facebook Marketplace $5 mini fridge. What Finesse does is it lets the pickaxe have a chance of not taking any durability when you mine blocks, with the trade-off being you cut the amount of blocks in half. This is a doo-doo stinky ability. I'll already have Unbreaking 3 on my pickaxe when I go to use it, and even then, when my pickaxe breaks, I'll just make another one. Finesse gets a 4.7 out of 10. Please just get Vein Miner Fortune. Don't waste your specialization on this. Alright, now that I'm done dogging on Finesse, let me talk to you all about Vein Miner Void. At first, I really liked the concept, however, things changed when I started testing it out. Vein Miner Void essentially voids or gets rid of all other blocks other than vault gems. Those blocks are completely deleted forever, and the worst part is, it only works inside of the vaults. Yeah, 2.3 out of 10. The reason why this isn't 0 out of 10 is because even Vein Miner cut in half is still somewhat useful. Alright, that's all of the Vein Miner abilities. Now onto Rampage. Base Rampage is very straightforward. You activate it and it burns the fixed amount of mana per second. However, you deal an extra percentage of damage. Who doesn't love extra damage? The problem is, after you've put 16 skill points into the ability, it's still not enough damage as some of the other abilities have. 6 out of 10. Good, but could be better. Now we have Vampire Rampage. I'm just gonna keep things nice and simple. This ability sucks. Vampire will life leech the amount of damage you deal, meaning you get healed. Usually, healing inside of a vault is great, but the life leech is only 3%. Let's say I do 20 damage in one hit with a sword crit. I will only be getting back 0.6 health. That is less than half a heart with each swing. Vampire gets a 1.3 out of 10. Next up is Chain Rampage. Now, even though this ability is basically a copy of multi-mob damaging vault gear modifiers like Cleave and, when you know it, Chaining, it's not completely useless. It may eat mana up like crazy, however you get the benefit of only needing to put one skill point into this ability to get the main effects. The idea is there, however it is already implemented into the weapon system, and so Chain Rampage gets a 3.3 out of 10. That covers the Rampage family. Now let's move on to a fan favorite, Dash. Dash has and always will be one of the best abilities in Vault Hunters. It's the best way to maneuver around inside and outside of the vault. It costs pretty much no mana, and you don't even need to put a lot of skill points into it for it to be good. It pairs extremely well with an Elytra, allowing you to fly with 0 rockets. Dash gets a respectable 9.8 out of 10. Dash Bullet, though it may be an unpopular choice, is also an extremely good ability. Dash Bullet turns your dash into an actual bullet, and any mob hit during the dash will take a percentage of your damage. On its own, Dash Bullet is pretty good, but when combined with some other abilities, it can really shine. It gets a 9.2 out of 10. Now, I'm gonna warn all of you in advance, the next 3 abilities are just not worth your time. First up, we got Mega Jump. Wait a minute, Mega Jump? That sounds just like Dash. Wrong! Dash can go both vertically and horizontally, however Mega Jump is strictly straight up, and it doesn't protect you from fall damage at all. So I've maxed out Mega Jump, and I'm dressed up in the scrappy fit with these feather falling boots on. And I'm just going to use Mega Jump to show you how bad it is. Yeah, I spent 10 skill points on this. The only reason I would ever take this ability is for Elytra travel. But even then, just use Dash, it's miles better. 2.7 out of 10. I was going to talk about these next 2 abilities, and then I kind of realized it would be 10 times funnier if I just didn't, and then made you guys look at this funny image I found instead. But anyways, Mega Jump, Drill, and Dig both get a 0 out of 0. If you want to know why, you should really read the description of these abilities. Alright, we're back into the good stuff. We got Heal. In Vault Hunters, staying alive is always the highest priority, and so an ability that prevents you from dying is so invaluable. It doesn't require that many skill points for it to be effective, and it doesn't use a lot of mana. The best ability in Vault Hunters by far, 10 out of 10. Now, people will look at Heal Aid and be like, ew, I don't have friends, and I wouldn't want to heal my friends anyway. But I think it's great. Even though this ability really only works in a multiplayer setting and you can't heal nearly as often, this is still really useful for healing a large chunk of health. I'm going to keep it real. I may have accidentally spec'd into this in my single player world, but it still works pretty good. Aid gets a 9.5 out of 10. Alright, here we are with Cleanse. Now, I think the developers messed up when making this ability. Cleanse is a fantastic ability. Any negative status effect is gone just like that. However, by making a specialization of heal, you disallow people to take heal, literally the best ability in Vault Hunters. Cleanse gets a 3.7 out of 10. Next up, we have Tank. Tank is in a very similar position to Mega Jump in the fact that there's already another ability that I'll be talking about a little bit later that can completely replace Tank, and it's just better in every way. Now, Tank gives you a percentage of resistance whenever you are hit by a mob that wears off after a little bit of time. The issue is, the condition for this ability to work is to get hit by a mob, which is usually what you don't want to do. Tank gets a 5 out of 10. A little unfortunate that another ability is way better, but what can you do? Alright, now we got Tank Rock. Now, I just need to know why the developers thought, hey, let's make an ability that costs 16 skill points for it to be effective and make the main quirk knockback resistance. Knockback is probably the last thing I think about in a vault. And now this ability comes in, telling me to use 7 mana per second to keep fueling this shitty ability. Rock Tank gets a 2.7 out of 10. Up next is Porcupine Tank. Ever since Vault Hunters 1.18, armor has been significantly nerfed and the protection enchantment has been completely removed from the game, which in turn also nerfed the Porcupine build of 1.16. However, due to its kinda cheap mana cost, it is somewhat viable with abilities such as Mana Shield and Dash Bullet. Overall though, Porcupine gets a 5.7 out of 10. It's not too strong unless you build an entire comp around it. Now, here we go with Hunter. Base Hunter makes it so that you can see all chests within a radius around you. The problem is, in Vault Hunters, chests are rarely hidden, and POIs spawn pretty commonly in every room, so it's not really worth it to use Hunter. The only reason I'd use this is for locating dungeons, but those aren't too hard to find. 5 out of 10. Now, these loot-specific Hunter abilities, like Ornate and Coins, I think are a little bit better than Base Hunter because it makes it easier to target a specific type of loot, and so I'll give these ones a 5.5 out of 10. Hunter Observer is overall better than both of these Hunter abilities, allowing you to see vault objectives like monoliths and obelisks instead of chests. I always feel like finding the vault objectives is way more important than knowing where chests are, so that's why I give Observer a 6.7 out of 10. Now that Hunter's out of the way, let's talk about Farmer. I don't even want to explain why these are a bad group of abilities, and so I'll just say their rating and what you should do instead of getting these abilities. Farmer, 3.3 out of 10, Botany Pots. Cultivator Farmer, 3.7 out of 10, Botany Pots. Gardener Farmer, 3.7 out of 10, Botany Pots. Rancher Farmer, 2.7 out of 10, Animal Pens. Okay, I guess I'll explain. The problem with each of these abilities is that there is something way better, or there is something that completely automates the process, eliminating the need to spend your skill points on these abilities, so please just don't do it. Moving on, we have Taunt. I'm personally not a big fan of base Taunt because it really only works in co-op vaults and the mobs get thrown towards you and specifically target you, when usually you want them to stay away from you. Despite this, I can't deny that Taunt can be a lifesaver in co-op vaults, and so I give it a 7.2 out of 10. Now, I might not like Taunt, however, I am a hard fanboy for Taunt Fear. I might be a little bit biased when I say this, but it's just such a good escape ability. The fact that mobs get pushed away and they completely refuse to attack for the duration makes getting loot or mining the mob spawner so much easier. 9.3 out of 10, a really fun ability. For the last ability that has specializations, we have Stonefall. Base Stonefall is just really easy to use and it works great. It's very simple, but it can be very effective to avoid fall damage. One slight teeny tiny issue though is water bucket clutches exist. Everyone does water bucket clutches now. I literally caught my grandma doing a water bucket clutch the other day. But anyways, Stonefall gets a 5.3 out of 10. Next up is Surefoot Stonefall. So after reading the description of this one, I was a bit puzzled and I was like, couldn't I just use those skill points to put them into Vein Miner and then just mine the powdered snow instead? I know that later on in the winter themes that powdered snow will generate in the vaults, but I feel like spending skill points on such a specific situation is just not worth it. Surefoot Stonefall gets a 3.5 out of 10. Lastly, we have Cold Snap Stonefall. Cold Snap will give you fire resistance for, wait a second, am I reading that right? 6 seconds of fire resistance at max level. Do they not know of the 8-minute fire resistance potion that completely replaces this ability? I will say though, this has more uses than Surefoot does, so I'll give Cold Snap a 3.8 out of 10. Okay, alright, so that was all of the Vault Hunter abilities that have specializations. Now it's to cover the ones that don't have specializations. Starting off, we have Summon Eternal. Now, as a beginner, you will not be using this ability at all. However, when we become rich enough to spend thousands of Eternal Souls and so many Rich Boy materials on cryo chambers and pedestals and gear for your Eternals, this is an incredible ability. Since this is more of a late game ability, I'm going to be giving Summon Eternal a 9 out of 10. Really, really good and a powerful ability, but it's locked behind a lot of materials. Secondly, we have Execute. Now, ever since the Kill the Boss Vault objective was replaced with the Kill the Guardians objective, Execute hasn't been that good. You see, the way Execute works is once you activate it and hit a mob, you deal 50% of that mob's total HP, meaning you could get the boss mob to half health and then use Execute to kill it instantly. The drawback to Execute is the extremely long wait time, so Execute gets a 8.7 out of 10. Next up is Ghost Walk, another personal favorite of mine. Ghost Walk will turn you invisible for a duration of time, in which mobs cannot attack or see you at all. Another thing about Ghost Walk is that it will completely nullify fall damage while the ability is active. As you can probably guess, this makes looting and escaping tense situations really easy, and it doesn't cost that many skill points. Ghost Walk gets a 9.3 out of 10. And finally, we have Mana Shield. This is the ability that you want to go for if you plan on going for any sort of tank build. For the low cost of 10 skill points and some mana, you can gain the ability to not take any damage for as long as your mana can last. Building around Mana Shield's weakness of mass mana consumption and pairing this ability with other abilities can make this really OP. Mana Shield gets a hot 9.7 out of 10. And with that, I believe that is everything you need to know about each of the Vault abilities. If you found this video helpful in any way, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe. But anyways guys, thank you for watching and I'll catch you later. See ya.